Have you ever worked at a company for like, I don't know, a month, 2 months, but it feels like years? That's pretty much how this whole situation felt. So, in this video, I'm going to be telling you guys my experience working for the Fresh Market. If you're not familiar with the Fresh Market, it is a chain of grocery stores similar to Publix and Whole Foods as far as the upscaleness of it. Very expensive, high class prices and services. There's a meat counter, a seafood counter, a bakery, things like that. The funny thing about Fresh Market though, when I started there, I don't know if you've ever been in, if you haven't been inside one, and you go up to the counter, it has literally about this much counter space. And when I had criticized or asked a question to one of the assistants as to why would they build a design like this, and she said, well, it's because the Fresh Market doesn't consider themselves to be a supermarket. Well, as a former employee, I would like to let you know, Fresh Market, that you guys are a supermarket. Yeah. You've got people doing really big shopping trips, and there is nothing more infuriating in the world in trying to unload a cart with this much counter space. And it just makes the whole process extremely frustrating, makes it much slower than it should be, and overall, it's not a great design. Let's just say that. I usually try to be very put together with my videos, and I'll write a list of things. This is the list we have to get through. So grab some snacks, use the bathroom. It's gonna be a long video. As a whole, the store is very conflicting. Like I said before, they don't consider themselves a supermarket. So the counter space of the cashier area is not built to handle the amount of shopping that a lot of customers tend to do, especially towards the holidays. Also, I will say this is the first market or supermarket like place I've ever been in that doesn't have a customer service desk. Usually, when you walk into any supermarket, I mean, that ones that I've walked into, they have customer service desk. It's pretty important. It's a core thing that I think any place should have, a supermarket as well, because of all the returns and things like that, situations that can arise. And they really stress on having amazing customer service and a no hassle refund policy. So I just think it's crazy that there is no customer service desk anywhere in the front, which also makes my job pretty hard as well. I am an assistant guest service manager. That was my title, was whatever. And being able to kind of do my job, the day to day of it, has been very stressful because I didn't really feel like I had a home there. I would kind of have to stand in on a register and kind of do my work there. So any refunds, things like that, I didn't really have a place to go to. The register was my place to go. And it just made things kind of weird and jumbled. Also, anybody had the ability to refund items. So normally when you go into a supermarket store, you go to the customer service desk and they'll refund you. But apparently the way that they function, the way that they want things to function, or the way that things did function there, any cashier has the ability to process a refund and give a customer their money back. They have obviously rules that they follow. One of the most annoying things about this refund policy is that it's just say yes. Like, no matter what crazy scenario happens, no matter if they have the product, the receipts, anything, just say yes. Just give them exactly what they ask for. We're not allowed to question the customer, ask them a few questions regarding the item or anything like that. If a customer comes to our line and says that something's on sale for $6.99 instead of $12.99, I'm supposed to just honor that price and not question them or go check. It nourishes one of the worst things you can nourish in a customer, and that's pretty much the motherfucking audacity to just walk into a place and kind of think that you can get away with whatever you want. And most people that shop in this particular store are those kind of people where they think the whole world revolves around them. So if you question them, or they don't get their way, they will make your life a living hell and of course try to get you fired. So when I first started at the Fresh Market, the training that I received was pretty bad. It's probably the worst training I've ever received for a job. I sat in front of a computer for one day, and then they just went over the basics of what the job is, talked about the culture of the job and things like that, policies, procedures, whatever. And then the next day, I was actually thrown into the job. I watched a few people just kind of bring some items up, whatever. And then I was full force and I went ahead and just started walking around and doing my job. Problem was is that I was getting bits and pieces. Now, the way that the job is structured, every department has a department head, and then they have either one or two assistants. At the time, there was one assistant there, and then I came in, and then another girl came in at the same time as I did. Both of us did not receive adequate training at all to do our job. Like when I tell you, like he was baby feeding us bits and pieces of information as we went along, and then he wouldn't spend any time really showing us how to do things. He would just show us like literally a few seconds of an introduction to it and then just run out. And he didn't take the time to show us how to do things correctly, but then would get upset when things weren't done right and would try to like reprimand us for it. And then on top of that, I would have I would have the assistant managers and the store manager question why I was doing certain procedures and then tell me that's not how we do it, and then they would tell me their way of doing it. So there was just a lot of back and forth, a lot of miscommunication. They're all on different pages and they want you to meet them all at those pages. So one of the most annoying things about that job was that they'd go back and forth and contradict their own rules. Like one of the rules that they apparently had before I started was we had to have 4 cashiers between the hours of 4 and 6 because that is considered our rush time. No problem. I went to go send one of my morning girls on a break before 4, and he got upset and tells her, "You can't go on your break. I'm going on my break, and there needs to be 4 cashiers up there at all times." And I said, that's interesting, because he and the store manager told me that there needed to be 4 cashiers between the hours of 4 to 6. All of a sudden, then he changed it and said, nope, 4 cashiers always. But he never makes the schedule to reflect that. And then he tries to group himself with us. But usually managers will kind of manage themselves. When I prepare my day and I make my breaks, I don't include him because he's a separate entity. He gives himself his own breaks. He'll come back whenever, and to be honest, he was never up in the front for me to even think about him, because he was never up front. So he's in the back hiding. He would get upset when I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna send her on break first because she came in first, and he's like, well, wait, I've been here since 8 o'clock. Okay, so go take your break. You're not included in this. And I told him that to his face. I don't include you in this because you're never here. Like, I'm taking care of my people. You're a separate entity. You take your break whenever you take your break. That has nothing to do with us. And if things were done differently, he should have told me that. But the thing is, this guy would not tell me things, not tell me the rules, but then get mad when I would so-called break the rules or whatever, or do something that he did not like. I had already mentioned that the communication was a bad problem, but I want to take just some time to really go over how bad this communication was. The store has a store manager, and then he has 2 assistants. And then, like I said before, every department has a department head. When we have a problem or someone calls out or whatever, it's supposed to go to your department head. Now, if obviously your department head is off, then you would call in the store, speak to the store manager or the assistants, and then that information would get relayed to the front. Half the time, that information never got relayed to anybody. They would take messages, people would call out, and they wouldn't say anything. So then I'd have a cashier that was supposed to be in at 8, and she's not there, and I'm going, well, where is she? And I'd let them know, oh yeah, she said she couldn't come in today. And it's like, I was planning my day. It would have been nice to know this ahead of time. Not only that, but if he knew she wasn't coming in, why couldn't he have made steps to make sure that I was covered? He never covered anybody's shift, even when they called out at enough time. He would never make adjustments. He would just leave the shift as is, but then get mad when we'd make certain decisions and want certain things to get done that we couldn't do because we didn't have the people for it. Like consistently he would leave, one closer, and if something happened, he just wouldn't. All right, well, there's nothing I can do. Or like or like switching someone. Like yesterday, I only had one closer. We had one opener who said she couldn't be there at open. She'd be willing to come in a little later. So what he should have done was take one of the other girls, because he had everyone leaving from he had like three people leaving at 6, and then he had one person leaving at 7. So what he should have done was have one of those girls in the mid just do night to cover that morning girl, and that way I wasn't short. Next thing I want to talk about is the pay. I took a pay cut when I took this job, and the pay cut was pretty significant. I was getting paid $18.50 is what they offered me, and quite frankly, for the amount of work and everything that you do, which by the way, when you sit and you have the interview, they don't tell you all the stuff that they expect of you. You get it in bits and pieces after you said, yes, I'll take the job. It's very frustrating to work for a company that clearly, as you can see around you, looks like they're pretty well off, and yet you're not getting the amount of money that you should be getting. And then you have a refund policy where you're giving away 30, 40, $50 of refunds no matter what, and yet you can't pay your employees a livable wage. That to me is a really big problem, and it was one of the things that eventually I couldn't deal with anymore, because it's very frustrating to have them sit there going, it's not a big deal, just give them the $30 refund. I'm like, that's interesting how you're just willing to throw away money, yet I can't live. I'm barely making paycheck to paycheck right now. The next thing I have on my list is job expectations. My interview was very, I don't want to say unprofessional, but it wasn't a typical professional interview. The assistant manager was a really cool guy, but he ended up just talking way too much about himself, and kind of talked a little bit too much about, like, we would trail off of certain subjects. He didn't spend any time really telling me about the job. I asked certain questions, but obviously couldn't get to everything I wanted to get to. But the things that I was expected to do, he pretty much told me my job was very people driven, no problem solving, barely any problem solving, barely any challenges. I'm going to spend 90% of my time on the register. That was pretty much what he told me. And I said, oh, okay. Then after I got the job, all these extra things came in play. Oh, we actually run Instacart, so you're going to have to do Instacart too. I'm like, okay. On top of also running my shift. And then they also wanted me to go outside and get carts. That was something that they never told me I'd have to do. And then at some point, my manager literally made a paper like this with just front end things that he wanted us to get done, all janitorial things. One of the things they expected me to do as an Instacarter, is that a word? Whatever. As an Instacart, was they would tell me to go behind the meat counter and get my own things, or go behind the bakery counter or whatever and things like that and get my own things. Number one, that's a problem, because I am food safety certified, but still, if you have a regular Joe Schmo who's not, and their hair is all out, because we're in customer service, so we can dress however we want as far as hair, whatever. But you're having somebody who is not equipped to go behind the counter, go behind the counter. And then you're also, this person's not food safety certified, so you're having them handle food that they shouldn't be handling. And then on top of that, when a customer comes up front, I'm supposed to pretty much tell this customer, hey, I don't really work here. This is not my department, so you're gonna have to wait for one of the people to come get you. Sorry. And that, of course, causes some sort of distress and will cause some sort of frustration with a customer. They're in their head, they're standing there watching somebody and going, well, you're behind the fucking counter. Why can't you just help me? And at one point I stopped and I started helping a customer, and then they started calling me on the speaker, and I couldn't go because I was in the middle of trying to help this customer. And of course she wanted a particular piece of fish. She didn't just want one piece of fish. She wanted one particular in this pile of fucking salmon. So it took me a while to kind of, I had to point, you want this one? No, this one? This? Okay. Anyways, so those are one of the things that was never told to me, and I just thought was not okay to do that. And then the guys at the meat counter were assholes when I first started and wanted me to do it. So like I would stand there and say, "Hey, could you just, I was showing one of the other we ended up getting a new assistant at one point, and I was showing the new assistant how to do one of the Instacarts. And there was nobody at the counter. And that was one of the rules that they told me. Oh, if there's no customer at the counter, then go ahead and ask the meat guys for what you need. But if there is a customer there, just go ahead and get it yourself, right? So I go up to the counter and there's no one there. And so I told her, there's no one here. So we're going to go ahead and ask him to get us what we need. So I went ahead and I asked him, and he's like, okay, so he's getting it. And he's like, are you guys, shopping, or are you doing an Instacart? And we're like, we're doing an Instacart. Me not realizing where he's going with this. And he's just like, y'all know y'all can service yourselves, right? And I was like, excuse me, sir? This isn't our department. So no, we shouldn't have to service ourselves. Number one. Number two, there are no customers. So you're mad at us because you have to do your job? That's a problem. So this created a lot of conflict, of course, and I had complained, and I said, you told me that when there was no customers there, I could ask them for what I needed. But he bitched at me and told me to get it myself, basically. Come to find out, the meat department had the worst problems of all, the whole department. Like this, I don't know what it is about these guys, but they were real shitty. They finally got a little better, I think, but for a while we were getting constant complaints because they were just ignoring customers. They wouldn't come out from behind the glass, and they would just flat out ignore a customer. So when I first started this job, one of the assistant managers had told me that whoever was in charge of the company prior did a really shitty job, and there was extremely high turnover. CEO was just driving the company down a road that was just not a great road. The morale was horrible. If you look at Indeed, Glassdoor, anything like that, where they have employee reviews, they were all just across the board horrible reviews of people telling you to just turn the other way. He claims that he feels that he has made a difference in this. That they got a new CEO. The CEO has been much better, has been making lots of changes, and the morale overall has gotten tremendously better than what it used to be. He claims himself as an individual that he also has changed the morale of this particular store. Things have gotten much better. People are super, super happy, right? But then I start to notice as I'm there, people walking out. Again, just flat out walking out. One of the assistants at the time, I had just met this guy, and within 2 weeks that I was there, he walked out. And then we lost a manager. We lost two managers. We lost one of the main managers in seafood, then another manager in meat. Then freaking cashiers were dropping like flies. Cashiers were constantly walking out, doing no call, no shows, things like that. So although this particular individual somehow believes he's made a difference, there's nothing that changed. The turnover rate for this store is ridiculous. Like, people walk out all the time. And unfortunately for these individuals, they don't really seem to care to question why, and they seem to think it's the individuals who are walking out. They're not thinking, perhaps the problem is us. They're not interested in thinking that perhaps the problem is them. I gave my week notice, and I figured I was giving them a nice opportunity to be able to speak to someone that is frustrated and leaving versus not getting a chance because most people walk out. And none of them have asked me why I'm leaving. They've treated me nice and cordial, which is good. Probably because they need me. But they have not asked me why I'm leaving. And I actually was told by another assistant that they were talking shit about me, saying that I wasn't going to show up, and pretty much saying things like that, like I'll bet you she's not going to show up for her shift and blah blah blah, and just all this garbage, right? So just a very toxic in general These people are very toxic, even though they don't believe that they are, or maybe they're not aware. I mean, whatever. You know, they could generally not be aware that the way that they manage and the way that they handle things is not good. But once again, if you're not asking, that already shows that you're clearly you're at some level you're aware, but you just don't care enough to ask, and you're just going to keep chalking it up to, oh, it's people suck, because right now that's been the big thing. Every company is sitting there going, people suck, people don't want to work, people don't want to, people aren't excited enough for jobs and things like that. They've never done any self-reflection to see if the real problem is maybe within themselves. And usually it is. Usually it is. If you have a mass amount of people walking out of a store, really? You really think it's the people? Sorry, yeah, I trailed off a bit. Let's start with the store manager. So he has been a store manager for, I'm trying to remember, I think they said he's been there for 5 years. I could be wrong, but I believe they said he's been there for 5 years. When I first met him, super nice, super welcoming, super professional. And I was like, okay, this is great. And then slowly but surely, he started to show his real personality. And I started to hear from other people in other departments that he is like, that I'm gonna hate him, that like, just wait for it. And I'm like, okay. And sure enough, he started to show his colors. And he is a micromanaging bully. That's kind of the best way I can explain. He wants to be on top of everything, but is also not on top of everything, if that makes sense. When my department head would not be there, either on a day off or whatever, all of a sudden, store manager would come up to the front and start running my shift for me, which to me didn't make any sense, because I was like, at this point, I've already been here for about a month. Why are you trying to do my job for me? Like, I don't need help doing this. If I need help, that's fine, I'll call you. But I don't need your help doing this. So I'm not really sure why he was up there. And he'd do things like, oh, we're going to send this person on break and then blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what are you doing? One of my biggest issues with all three of them is they don't know how to run each department. So I'm just questioning as to what the criteria is for management. Because how do you bypass all the departments and you're the top, but you don't know how to run each department? You can't answer simple questions about opening and closing procedures. They didn't know how to do the paperwork. They didn't know how to do anything. And they didn't even seem like fazed by it. They didn't really, they just made it seem like it was an okay thing to just not know that. And for me, it's not. I feel like one of the criteria for being an assistant store manager or a store manager should be that you know at least a good enough amount about each department so that in the event the department head leaves, you know how to do that job. What were they going to do if my department head just decides he's done? They wouldn't know, because they don't know how to do his job. And that's crazy to me. Like, I can't wrap my head around that. And so, because of it, a lot of my nights and mornings were very stressful, because when I needed help, because once again, remember, did not get good training, they wouldn't know how to help me. And they would just say, oh, wait till he comes in. He'll just tell you, wait till he comes in. It was frustrating to me, because no, I like to just get my job. Like, all my paperwork, I like to get done at a certain time. I'm a very self-efficient person. I'm a self-starter. I like to do my stuff as early as possible when I can and get done. But you telling me to wait, it just messes up my routine for the day. And I don't want to keep working on this in the middle of the day. I want to just get it out the way. Number one. Number two, there's something called the DCR, which is the daily cash report. That daily cash report needed to be in before 12 to corporate. And that was something that they stressed, yet they were okay with just waiting for it to get done. And usually when my department head came in, if he wasn't opening, he was coming in for night, and that's 1:30, and that's obviously after 12. So That DCR would never get done when it should get done, but yet they kept making it, like, stressing how important it was that that DCR was in before 12. That was another thing that to me, I'm just like, yeah, but because you guys don't know how to do this job, I, we can't get done the things that need to get done. Florida went through a hurricane, Hurricane Ian, kind of fucked up. He fucked up certain parts in Florida. But anyways, towards the preparation for Hurricane Ian and things like that, there was also, just to give you some side notes so you don't think I'm crazy, the area in downtown is horrible because, first of all, traffic, like, just traffic. That I have no other word besides massive traffic and fucking annoyance and whatever. But then the potholes, and also that area is highly prone to deep flooding, like, bad. My fiance would take, like, side corner, like, behind, he would, like, drive the nice little scenic route with the houses. And one time we had just a normal rainfall and he said he saw two cars get stuck in a puddle in the nice little neighborhood. So it's a pretty bad area for flooding, raining a lot, things like that, towards the Hurricane Ian coming. I called because, also keep in mind, I have one car. Something happens to that one car, myself and my fiance are out of jobs. And also, I don't make a lot of money to be able to cover my car in case something happens. But anywho's, so I called him and said, hey, it's Rebecca. I don't feel safe right now leaving my house. I can't really risk something happening to my car. And as you know, that area is very prone to flooding, has really bad potholes, just things like that, right? Whatever. So then he goes and says, well, it's not really supposed to rain until later in the day. But also, you want to kind of think of your other coworkers. You don't want to let them down. And, you kind of want to make sure that, you're thinking of everybody else, that's going to suffer because you're choosing not to come into work. You've also called out several times. So, that doesn't really look good, which I only called out once. In the 2 months that I've worked at this shitty job, I've only called out once. So he clearly got me mixed with somebody else, which is also a problem in itself. The simple fact that he chose to try and bully me to come in versus just saying, okay, that you don't feel safe, all right, no problem, you stay home, whatever. Whether or not he thought it was a good enough excuse, it doesn't matter. If an employee is telling you they don't feel safe and they don't want to come work, you have no right to bully that employee to come to work by telling them to think of the other people. Why? You think the other people think of me? Fuck no. Do you think of me? Fuck no. So why do you want me to think of other people? Which, first of all, anybody who knows me knows that I'm one of the most generous, one of the most kindest, one of the most nicest, one of the most considerate. I am so nice. I think of people way more than I should. I think of people over myself. So telling someone like me to think of other fucking people is like like, he went for my character. Like, when I tell you I feel super offended, I was so mad. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, you really don't know me. And then you went out with the bully tactic. Wow, okay, wow, lots of things happening. My sensors were blown. And so then and I'm like, okay. Like, I literally didn't know what to say because I'm just like, okay. He's like, so are you gonna come in or not? And I'm like, I guess I have to because you're bullying me now. You're making me feel like I have to go, even though I'm telling you I don't feel comfortable going and I can't afford my car, like, to get fucked up. But you clearly don't care, which is interesting because you're telling me to think of other people, but you're not thinking of me. But you want me to think of other people. So, so I'm like, I guess I am gonna come. Like, I was so confused. Like, he mind fucked me into saying I'm gonna come, even though in my head I was like, I was stressing out because I didn't want to go. I was scared. I was terrified. So yeah, so that was pretty much the dusting my hands off with that guy. I just have so many issues with a manager that is on top, yet he doesn't know how to work any of his departments. You come to him with certain issues and he kind of blames other things or other whatever and will tell you, oh, it's just the way we do things here and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't really take into consideration why the high turnover is the way it is, and just certain things that should be mentioned, like certain things that should be fixed, like little things, are not getting fixed. Yeah. That's all I'm gonna say. But not the worst, but not the best. He had two assistant managers. One of the assistant managers, he's a guy. He was the one I had my interview with. Really nice, personable guy, but unfortunately, he did not give me a proper rundown of my job. Number one. Number two, I would get yelled at for like things I would like. We have a pink box. The pink box is supposed to be in the bottom safe, and it's supposed to be kept there all day. It comes out only when we, count it in the morning like we're supposed to, and then it goes in the box, and then it comes back at night again, and we're supposed to count it. Blah blah blah. Whatever. This particular manager would pretty much just not follow the rules at all. Take out the box, throw it at me, let me have it all day. Wouldn't sign any of the papers I needed him to sign to verify that he watched me. He didn't watch me. He just like, here you go, and leave. And also, he got really upset. He was mad at my department head for not doing his job properly. And so he would pretty much say things like, the front end is pretty much dead to me. Don't bother me for things like that. Don't call me, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, right? Very unsupportive when he was supposed to be supporting. I had a cashier that needed help with a refund. Some customer said that she fucking owed him $6, whatever, right? So I'm like, okay, $6, right? And she's like, yeah, I just need you to. I'm like, all right, no problem. I do the refund for $6. Then all of a sudden I notice there's lines. There's people going into aisles, whatever, right? So I'm like, all right, here's your refund, whatever, have a nice day. I run over, I open up my register, and I start taking people. She comes up to me and she's like, oh, he says you owe him $2 extra. I said, are you fucking shitting me? I just gave him $6. You told me that's what. I know, I'm sorry, but now he's saying I apparently owe him $6, that we did the math wrong. I said, I don't have time for this. So do me a favor and call this guy so that he can take care of this customer, because I can't. I have my line open. She calls him. He comes. He looks around, kind of like soaks in what's going on, and then proceeds to help the customer. But then on his way, leaving the front, he sees me on the register. He's so mad. He sees me on the register helping customers, trying to get these lines down, and comes up to me and goes, oh, by the way, refunds is your thing. And I went, what? Refunds are your thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm well aware refunds are my thing, but as you can see, I'm currently busy. I'm doing my another part of my job, because I have several jobs. I wear several hats, and I'm taking care of customers so that the lines don't build up. So I'm doing my job. You told me you're here to help me and support me, but you're mad that I called you to support me. And this wasn't the first time he did this to me. Then another thing that was annoying with him is that he was in charge of the hiring process and the tours and things like that for all new employees. So because of it, every employee felt like if they had a problem, they would go to him. But he was getting very agitated with people doing that. Fortunately, most of my cashiers, the seasoned ones or the older ones, do not like my manager, my department head. So they would go straight to this guy to complain. And he would then yell at me, and you need to tell them to talk to him, and I'm not here for that, blah, blah, blah. That's your fault, buddy. You hire these people, but you also need to then tell them he is your department head. You have an issue or a problem with your schedule, anything. It's him you talk to. If he doesn't fix your problem, then you come to me. That's just you doing your job and making sure that you're communicating to the people that you are just you just handle the hiring portion. That doesn't mean that they come to you when they have an issue. That's just one of your jobs as an assistant, is hiring. But if they have a problem, they have to follow the proper chain of command. We have the other assistant. She has been there for a very long time, like 13 years or somewhat. She's pretty much her first and probably gonna be her last job, first and only job. Very by the book, but she's also what I would call too by the book. She eats shit. Whatever the customer says goes. She's pretty much the perfect employee that a company would look for. Very nice, very sweet, but once again, same problem with the other assistant. You come to her with an issue and she'll get defensive. Oh, I wasn't here. Okay, well, now you are, and I'm telling you so that you're aware of the situation so that you can hopefully do something about it. But she wouldn't take any sort of like you know what I mean, like ownership, and she wouldn't help to try and relieve some of the issues that I had, and that was one of my other issues with them. is that they never take a sense of responsibility to say, okay, this employee has a problem. I'm gonna fix this problem. I'm gonna help this employee. I'm gonna support the fuck out of you. They don't do that. They're just, I don't know. I wasn't here. Talk to this other person. Bye. Like that's their mentality. And as a manager myself, that's just not. I don't want to work for people like that. I just don't. I'll bust my ass for an employee and help them and support them in any possible way to fix their problem. And I expect that from a manager. But one of my biggest issues with her, and then we'll move on. We got a lot. One of my biggest issues with her was, be some backstory in order for you to understand this scenario. There should be a manager at all day parts, right? So morning, mid, night. And no manager can take their lunch until another manager is present. And usually, if another manager up front is not present, we then need to rely on the assistant managers or the store manager. So, a typical night shift can be 1:30 to 10 or 2 to 10. My shift was 2 to 10 this day, and my department head scheduled himself 8 to 4:30, which, by the way, he usually schedules myself or the other assistants 8 to 5:30, 8 to 6, really long shifts. But he schedules himself 8 to 4:30, right? So, I came in at 2 that day, and in their minds, or how they want things to run, they want us to take our breaks before the last manager leaves. And normally, in that type of scenario, I get it. I understand it. Because, you can't leave the front without a manager. I get it. However, she got upset because I took my break after he left. So, of course, she had to watch my front for me. 6 o'clock comes rolling around because I was like, that's a good median. I'm here from 2 to 10. 6 is a good median. So I go to her and I'm like, here you go, handing her the keys and the Instacart phones. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going on my lunch. She goes, well, who's up front? I said, there is no one up front because he left at 4:30. So I need you to cover the front for me while I take my lunch. Like usual. They've done it before, so it's usually not a problem, whatever. And she goes, well, I guess I have no choice, but you're supposed to take your lunch before he leaves. And I said, I understand that, but he really didn't schedule to where that would have made sense. And she's like, well, what time did you come in? I said, I came in at 2. Yeah, you should have taken your break before that. I said, so you want me to take my break an hour into my shift and then work the entirety of my shift with no other break? Because keep in mind, if you work a 6-hour break, a 6-hour shift, you're entitled to a 30-minute break. And then if you work an 8-hour shift, you're entitled to a 30-minute lunch break and then a 10-minute break, like a 10-minute, on the clock break. He was scheduling us 9 to 10 hours some days, and we would only get that one 30-minute break, lunch break. I never got my 10-minute breaks, so I would always try to make sure that I put my lunch break in the middle of my shift so that I'd have a nice little, balance, whatever, right? I said, well, he left at 4:30. That would have been an hour into my shift, and I like to make it to where it's even because it's my only break. Well, sometimes it's like that. You just have to have that break, and you just take it when you need to take it. And I'm like, I don't agree with this, but okay. And that's all. I'm not gonna argue. I was like, okay. And I gave her my stuff, and she took it. Not willingly, but she took it. If that's something you have to deal with, I'm sorry. That's not something normal that your employee should deal with. And if I'm telling you that that's how, and if you're aware that that's how that happens, you should do something about it and say, that's a problem. You're not getting your 10-minute break, and you're also having to take your break way too soon when you just got here and then work 8 hours with no other break. That's not okay. And listen, if you're the kind of person that can function that way, that's fine. In a normal working environment, that's not okay. It's not okay for any employee to work that way or to have their breaks like that. And it's just not. I try to create as much balance and comfortability as I can when I run a shift. In their mind, if I deal with this, they all have to deal with that. If I have to do this, they all have to do that. This was a totally fixable problem. So that's what, like, for me, that's the frustration. That she should have said, okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware. I will talk to him and we'll see about fixing this so that you don't have to take your break that soon. But no, she pretty much said, well, it be like that. And I have to deal with that, so I guess you have to deal with that too. I sure the fuck do not. And that's a problem. And that's a problem that you had an opportunity to fix because I brought it to your attention. And instead you just went, oh wells. So my department head, very nice guy, but let me see if I can explain him in a... I don't really know how to... I'm just gonna go. He's a very nice guy at first when you meet him. He can be very personable. He can be very considerate. He tries, you know what I mean? Like, he'll tell you things like, oh, he really does care about me. He'll put me first, and he's a good manager and things like that. But then he does things that contradict all of those things. It's very difficult to work with him, and I'm very, very sure that the reason why we have such high turnover in the front is him. Because he will do all those things and say all those nice things, but then the more you start to get to know him more and you're more seasoned into the company, he will start to pretty much treat you like shit. Like, for instance, he will talk down. He will yell when he's angry or you make a mistake or whatever. And then his expectations for what he expects you to do, but he won't do. The scheduling was outrageous. I have never met a manager so bad at scheduling. He's really bad at scheduling. Probably that's the biggest problem that I have with him, is his scheduling. He did horrible. Like, and then there were things that, like, let's say, for instance, if he knew a cashier wasn't coming in, he wouldn't leave me a note in the morning. I would have to text him and say, hey, this cashier's not here. What's going on? Oh, yeah, she wasn't coming in. Okay. You knew ahead of time. Why couldn't you call somebody and try to get that covered, or at least tell me so I'm aware and maybe I can plan my day a little better? Like, he wouldn't be good at communicating, but then he also wouldn't take the initiative to fix those problems. He would just be like, hey, I guess they're not showing up. It is what it is. He wouldn't just take the initiative. Or, like, he would move people around. Like, for instance, we had a guy who did a no-call, no-show for a close. And rather than fixing the problem and saying, okay, well, you know, one of us can come in or whatever, we just left it. So one of our assistants had to close by herself pretty much because she had no cashier to close. He's barely up in the front. Barely up in the front. The only way he was usually up in the front is if we called him. He wouldn't want to deal with customers. If there was a problem in the store, like, you know, a customer asked us about the membership and things like that, I would call him because, once again, I didn't get a lot of training. So I didn't know. So I would call him and he would just kind of look at me angrily about it. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is your job is people, but okay. And then it's like he wanted us to, like, bend over backwards for him, but he wouldn't bend over backwards for us. I am a very loyal person. I will do as much work as possible, but I need to know that my manager is in there with me and he's going to do just as much work as I'm doing. And when I have a manager that's lazy and then wants to just yell at me and critique me constantly for, like, things that weren't my fault because you couldn't train me, but you also don't want to do the work yourself, like, it's I can't tell you how much that immediately will just make me not want to work for a person. Because why would I want to? Why are you going to want to bust your ass for somebody who's not willing to bust their ass for you? It's a mutual respect. Just because I'm your assistant doesn't mean I'm your fucking bitch, or I'm your, you know, you can do whatever and tell me to do whatever, and I'm just going to sit there going, okay. No. I would bring a lot of complaints to him to try and help him kind of fix things because I started to see a lot of issues, and I said, listen, this is what's going on. Can we fix it? Oh, yeah, we'll get to it. I'll see what I can do. He never changed anything. He never mentioned anything. He never said anything. So nothing got changed. Like, what's the purpose of me saying something to you when you're not going to make the change that needs to be made? So I stopped talking to him because I was like, well, if you're not going to listen to me, then what's the point? But they're all like that. They all do this, like, they're either defensive or it's like just, you know, in, out. All of them as an entirety is just extremely hard to work with or for because they just want to work how they're gonna work, and they don't want anyone to ask questions or try to make things better or complain or anything like that. So I know I touched on this a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about the refund policy. So the Fresh Market has a just say yes policy. Pretty much, if a customer comes in and complains about fucking anything, I'm supposed to just give them their money back, no matter what. No questions, no nothing, just whatevs. If you don't have a receipt, whether you have a receipt, whether you don't, I mean, we'd like for people to at least have the product. Most people don't even bring the fucking product or the receipt or whatever. I had one lady one time bring me a picture. She showed me a picture on her phone and said that the steaks were nasty. I really do think that there should be some sort of guideline. And also, you know, if you have policies and procedures that we're supposed to follow, but then you're just telling us to just say yes to every fucking person, how are we supposed to follow policies and procedures? Why even bother making them if you're just going to make one that literally tops all of them by just saying do whatever the fuck they want you to do? Doesn't really seem to make sense, but yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is the Instacart portion of the job. I had no idea that we did Instacart. They didn't tell me, and it wasn't until I got hired and I started my day on the floor that they were like, hey, Instacart phones, congratulations, you're an Instacart shopper. And I was like, wait, what? I actually don't mind doing the Instacart. It's the fact that we need to do that on top of also making sure that we're in the front and doing our job. And so it becomes a lot of running back and forth. And then a lot of times it was just, you know, it's just one manager up in the front doing their job. And so it became very stressful to try and get this stuff done while also expecting to be up front and helping the cashiers and things like that. The next thing we're going to talk about is the hiring. So I'm not sure if this is a fresh market policy or whatever, but from what my department head told me, he has a policy of not hiring full-time cashiers. He only hires part-time cashiers. However, we had people who were under the impression that they were full-time and they were receiving full-time hours. But at some point, I guess when they hired more people, they were going to drop their hours. And a lot of them were not aware. I told a lot of the girls that were full-time what he had said, and they just got really like upset, and they're like, what do you mean? Like, I can't afford to lose my hour. I need my hours. I'm supposed to be full-time. And I'm like, I get it. I'm just telling you that apparently is not a thing. Because I had questioned him too. Why don't we have full-time employees? Why don't we have full-time cashiers? That's something that we need. They kept hiring part-time cashiers, and then they kept hiring people. First of all, they were hiring lots of minors, but they were also hiring lots of people who could only work 2 days, 3 days, and only work like 4 hours a day. Like, that's just not what we needed. So like the business needs didn't ever seem to factor in to the hiring portion. And it, of course, created a lot of frustration for us because there have been, of course, a lot of people who would abandon their jobs. Of course, why would you keep a job that you only have for 2 days? It's not worth the traffic. It's not worth nothing is worth getting in that traffic for. Even being full-time, let alone somebody who only works there for 2 days, 4 hours a day. Like, really? We had some people that were working once a week for 8 hours. What could that possibly be giving you? So that was like another big issue. And then when I said, wouldn't it make more sense to just, no, that's just how we do things here. I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna lose a lot more people because that's stupid. You should also tell the people that you're hiring them for part-time, because you can't tell me that they were all told they were hired part-time and they're all telling me, no, I'm full-time. Like, they're all really, really like committed to this whole I'm full-time idea. So that's a lot of bad miscommunication, that these people signed up for this job thinking they were full-time or being told they were full-time.
Get out.
One of the things I wanted to bring up, just to kind of help you to really understand the kind of management, was one of the things that happened to one of the cashiers. During the hurricane, her house got really badly hit. She lost power. She had been without power for about almost a whole week. Her car got flooded, so she lost her car. Her kids had no food at that point then because her refrigerator was out. Really, really rough. She had it rough. And because of it, she had been missing a lot of days at work. She was just calling out, and I wasn't sure why she was calling out, but I assumed it was for a good reason, because she's a good employee and she usually called and gave enough notice, right? So I'd spoken to my boss about it, and he was just like, yeah, she's always coming up with a different story every day, and I'm just tired of it, and blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, okay. when she finally came and I saw her, I was like, hey, where have you been? And she had told me about her house. She showed me the pictures or whatever, and she's like, they've been so insensitive to me. When she spoke to the store manager to tell him that she wasn't coming in, he pretty much told her, well, just tell us what works for you and we can put you on the schedule. We hate for you to lose your hours. And I'm like, why would you threaten to take her hours away for something that she can't control? And she's also telling you that she can't come in because she has no car. She also has no power. She has her kids that are now stuck in a house with no power. She has no food. And you want her to think about coming to work and how she's going to make it to work. That's the problem that I talk about when it's like, I understand that, yes, it's a job, but at the end of the day, like, you have to be sympathetic. Everyone goes through bullshit. The discount in the Fresh Market is probably one of the best reasons to work there, if not the only. It is a 30% discount on everything except for obviously beer, because that'd be too easy. But you get pretty much 30% on everything: deli, meat, produce, everything. And it's one of the best perks to working there. I'm actually extremely sad to lose my discount. They also obviously do offer other things. Their insurance, I didn't get to use their insurance, unfortunately, but from what I saw, their insurance looks very good, so very sad about that. But very good insurance. They offer other perks too, like they have something called, I think it's called Tickets at Work, or a perk like that, and lots of other different things. So the perks, the discounts and things like that are good, but I don't know if it's worth the garbage and bullshit you have to deal with day to day. I just don't know. Next thing I want to talk about is the structure of the store. We've talked about the front, how there's no customer service desk, there's no conveyor belts, it's like a fucking chunk of a counter. But another thing that I find is very weird of this brand is that their name, the Fresh Market, kind of makes you feel like they're this bougie, upscale, fresh, organic place, right? But you walk in there and then you find things like Coke, Sprite, Coke like the drink, Coke, Sprite, Fanta, things, Cheerios, brands and names that you wouldn't expect to find in places that say the Fresh Market. Like, the Fresh or it's just weird. For me, it's weird. I understand that they probably do it because I don't really know what kind of place they consider themselves, and I guess they just want to be an overall convenience for people, but to me, it's weird. It's weird to have like mostly organic things and make things from scratch and things like that, and then boom, there's a box of like Cheerios and a Coke fridge just chilling in between the kombucha and the healthy deli sandwiches. It's a little weird, a little confusing. And then we have things like, we have Bounty. They got Bounty there, which is extremely overly priced. They have vitamin section, which is literally one section. It's not a big deal. Like, Whole Foods really invest in your health and your wellness. Even Publix has like a nice like four shelfer, if not a whole row. But no, Fresh Market's like just one little row of vitamins and little stuff, deodorants, things like that. Just, a little section of health and wellness and body shit, and then the rest of it's just Bounty and stuff, paper stuff. Yeah, very weird structure. Also, from what they explained to me, Fresh Market only carries one brand per product. If we have only one kind of canned corn and it's out, that's it. We ain't got no more canned corn. Supermarkets will carry at least 1 or 2 or 3 brands even of certain things: shredded cheese, vegan products, vegetables, things like that. Nope. If we're out of Dole pineapple chunks, we have no pineapple chunks anywhere in the store. And I also feel like it does create a inconvenience for customers, because fuck, if you're out of one kind of, why don't you have another kind of corn? Why? Because and then you're taking a chance. You're like, I want to go to the store, but I'm scared. What if they're out of something and they don't have it, and then I have to go to another store? Versus I can say, okay, Publix, they might not have the kind of corn I want, but they'll definitely have another brand of corn that I can pick up. But at the Fresh Market, you can't say that. So I know this sounds crazy, but being a cashier is actually not as easy as a job as you think it'd be. The cashiers go through a lot of fucking shit, and their job requires a lot of paying attention and making sure that they're getting the right codes for items, like things like produce, and also a lot of sales and deals, knowing the sales and deals. So when a customer comes up and says, "Hey, I'm supposed to get this for $6.99," and it's not coming off as $6.99, being able to know those things will make you very effective in your job. However, there's a lot of things that are out of our control that makes our job very stressful. And when we try to tell the managers that, they really didn't care. They kept making excuses as to why, or they'd say, "Oh, we handle it," and they'd never fucking handle it. One of the most annoying things that we had to deal with was the barcodes getting cut off. So meat happened a lot, and like meat department was infamous for it. But it would also happen sometimes in the deli, and so instead of getting the full barcode, we'd get like the barcode would be like half off. So it would cause a lot of stress, and then the customer had to wait as well while we had to go fix the barcode, and sometimes we couldn't just put the number in because if we didn't scan it, the it wouldn't recognize it, and so then the customer would put their number in to get the discount off of it, but it didn't know what it was, so it wouldn't discount what the customer was supposed to get. So hopefully I explained that right. But so that caused a lot of issues as well. And we tried several times, "Hey, please tell them to fix this, blah blah blah." "Oh, we'll do it, whatever." Well, they never did. They would never fix it. And so it was a constant thing that we needed to deal with. And it was very upsetting too, because when we'd have our meetings and when we'd have the store manager come up to us, there'd be two different things. There'd be cashier experience or cashing, like cashier experience, cashier friendly list, whatever, right? We get 100. So customers were saying that their experience with us, like dealing with the cashiers, were great, 100%, super friendly, whatever. The checking out experience, however, was like 64, and they'd blame us for that. And it's like, no, checking out experience is different from the cashier experience. Checking out experience means things like that. Your barcodes are not working, whatever makes that checking out experience not okay. And a lot of time, and it wasn't us, because if you're telling me that the cashier experience is 100%, that means that the checking out experience obviously is technical. So I had to do a lot with either the customer having to wait in line too long, barcodes not working, and cashiers needing to leave them to get the proper barcodes, freaking stickers not even being on the items. A lot of them would just hand the customer the item and there's no sticker and we can't scan it, which happened a lot with birthday cake slices. Even though they were gonna be free, we still needed the freaking sticker on it to scan it to get it free. Another one of the major big problems that this company has is their front end, the registers. They upgraded, I guess, the computer, like the actual screen, but they never updated their pin pads. So a lot of times, every single day, if not one pin pad, all of them would completely stop working as far as Apple Pay. So we had lots of customers that were getting furious because, of course, they had to either go to their car to go get their card, or they didn't have their card at all and they had no other way of payment. Or we had people that, had no cash or whatever. They had to go to ATM to get cash to come back to pay for their items. I mean, it was an absolute fucking, it's always something. We had people that would just get so upset over those things, but at the same time I'd be upset too if I'm shopping at a place that is expensive and high class and it looks gorgeous. I would expect the technology to be just as upscale and match the esque, match the look of the store. When we had told them this several times, they would just say, "Oh, well, we put in a complaint. There's nothing else we can do." How many fucking complaints are you going to put in before you get to the next step? We're telling you this is a constant problem. This is causing a lot of grief for our customers. And you all sitting there with the customer comes first and blah, blah, blah. But you're not doing anything to fix the problem, because it's also a grief for us as well, because having to then look at the customer and go, "Hey, I guess my Apple Pay isn't working, sorry, do you have any other form of payment?" And most of them don't, and they're like, "So I have to go to my car?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you're gonna have to go to your car." Like, well, this is ridiculous. I agree, but do you want your groceries or not? But it was things like that. I mean, I felt bad, but there was nothing else we could do at that point. I would have to, and then the only thing I could do to just troubleshoot it would be to go ahead and just restart the register, but they took forever to come back up. I couldn't do that for every register, and it was just that's even more of an inconvenience, because then I'm like, okay, well then one register's down, the cashier's just standing there doing nothing, and it just created more problems than it solved. So at the Fresh Market, we have something called Little Big Meals. If you're not familiar with it, basically it's a meal that feeds 4 people, a family of 4, and it's usually discounted at $25 even. And it'll be 6 items that you'll get. You have to get all 6 items in order to get the price at $25. It's a pretty cool meal option for families, for busy families that don't have the time, or people who just don't like to think of, I don't know, food meals to make, whatever, right? Now, normally for the summer, we had 2. So that was 6 and 6. That was 12 items we need to keep track of and know by memory. So in case one person was getting one meal, we'd say, hey, you're missing something. So for summer, we had 2. We dropped back down to usually 1 is what we normally have. They went ahead and they added 2 more. So now we have a total of 3 big meals that we need to keep track of. So that's about 4 to 6 items that we need to remember and make sure that we know what items go with what meal, so that if a customer gets it, we can make sure that it's correct. But the problem with this is it does add a lot of stress to us, because once again, everything needs to be labeled with the LBM sticker, and if it's not, it won't register as an LBM and it won't come off, and then I or myself or another assistant has to run around and discount the meal for them. We're doing it so often because things weren't coming out the right way that corporate sent the letter getting upset saying there was too many miscellaneous things that were being put in and the Little Big Meal wasn't properly getting rung up. Well, we couldn't ring it up properly because the stickers weren't being done accurately, or we would have all the items, but they still wouldn't ring out properly, so we had no choice but to go ahead and manually give them the discount. Anyways, I'm sorry, getting back to it. The sheer fact that they decided to add 2 extra when it's already hard enough for us to keep track of 2, or 1, I should say, and making sure that we have all the items we need, and then constantly throughout the day, the amount of production that each of our departments do is crazy. So to add even more work to their plate, and then with the holidays coming up and all the holiday items that they're gonna have to make, it's just outrageous. And right now, unfortunately, my store, because of the high turnover, doesn't have enough people. So all the people that are there are working like double, triple what they should be working. So for some of you that are perceptive, you've probably noticed I've changed my outfit. And it's just because this is a new day. I was on my way to work, my last day, and I started thinking of extra stuff that I did not say in my original video that I made, and I was like, damn, no, I really want to say this. So anyways, here is an extra video that I've now stitched together with my older video to make sure that I get completely everything out that I need to say about this company. So we're just gonna dive into it like nothing ever happened. So they did this annoying thing where we opened up at 8, but for whatever reason they would open up at 7:50, and they would open up regardless of whether or not there was a cashier there or not. And it would be annoying because I'd get there at 7:50 or sometimes 7:55 depending on traffic, and they'd be like upset with me because they're open and I'm not there. And it's like, well, we don't open till 8. Now usually, of course, in a job you want to make sure you're there 10 minutes before, so obviously you can get ready for the job. It's hard for me to sit there and justify, because part of me is just like, no, why are we opening up 10 minutes before we're supposed to open up? Unless there is a line of customers, I don't really see the necessity to open up 10 minutes before. And this is, mind you, when the store was still not ready. The specials of the day were not out. Deli, meat department, none of them were ready. And yet we're opening up an additional 10 minutes ahead of time. Also, for the job that I had, at some point I was supposed to do scheduling, change orders, and things like that. I was never taught. I was there for 2 months, and he kept talking about how he was going to teach me those things, but he never taught me how to do those things. And I honestly feel like I got better training than my 2 co-workers who had come in after me. And keep in mind, I got like bits and pieces of training, but these two new poor women that came in, they got barely any training. I actually trained them more than he did, and I did my best. But the job does require you to have some common sense and kind of get on your feet and figure things out. And at the end of the day, just making the customer happy seems to be the most important thing to do. So whatever it takes to make them happy, just do it. Everything else is operational, and that can be fixed later on. As a whole, it didn't seem like the management was really paying attention to a lot of things that I felt like should have been paid attention to, like the lack of dedication on certain department leads. The meat department, the lead, he was on the phone every morning, on his phone with his Bluetooth connected and just talking to a random person every morning. None of these managers seem to notice that. He never got reprimanded for it. He just got away with talking on the phone while also taking care of customers, because we're already open at this time. Those things like that tell me that they were not paying attention as much as they should have been, and they missed a lot of, and that is missing a lot of opportunities to make the store better. And then when you don't bother to ask your employees for a check-in, you know, how are we doing? What's going on? They don't ever seem to be interested in finding out why their turnover is so bad. Like when I put in my week notice, he didn't ask me anything. It wasn't until yesterday, my last day, in the middle of doing an Instacart, that he's like, "Can I ask you why you're leaving? Do you really care? Like, why are you asking me now? You had a great opportunity to ask me this entire week. We could have actually had a conversation about it. I would have been more than happy to share my thoughts." When you ask someone last minute like that, it just kind of seems like you really don't care and you're just asking to ask. And I mean, whether it's that he just had a lot of things on his mind, or he just wasn't, I don't know, but to me it just wasn't a good impression. It left me feeling like they really did not care, and it was a last thought that he thought he'd throw out to just kind of make it seem like they cared enough to ask. There's a lot of people who switch departments because they're not happy in departments that they are in. Why? That was never offered for me. They never offered me to move departments. They never asked any questions. I worked my entire week and none of the higher ups asked me why I was leaving, if there was any other options I'd like. Never finding, like, just not curious at all to know why, which obviously made me feel like they didn't care. And they probably didn't. And then towards the end, yesterday, I'm leaving. The store manager goes, "Oh, Rebecca," and I turn around and he's like, you know, "We could put you on the schedule for one day. You know, you wouldn't make what you're making now, but we could put you at 15 and you could just at least work once a week." And I'm like, no. Number one, who the fuck would that help? It's not gonna help me. It's also not going to help my coworkers. Number two, that's the reason why you guys have the high turnover you have. It's just not a good idea to put someone on schedule for 1 to 2 days. Most people are not going to be that dedicated to show up to their job like that, because there's no incentive for them to. You're not making enough money. Also, the trip it takes and the gas it takes to get here, definitely not worth me working one day at $15 an hour to work 8 hours for that one day. And I also thought it was kind of like insulting to offer me that pay and just one day, rather than saying, "Hey, why I'm just curious, why are you leaving? Is there anything we can do to make you want to stay? Is it maybe the department? Do you want to switch department?" Like that. You see the lack of "I don't give a fuck"? That's I don't give a fuck. So to offer me something like that, I was just like, wow, you guys really do suck. It's pretty shitty. Don't offer don't offer employees that. That's pretty shitty. That's a shitty way to say, "Hey, I don't really care, but I'm gonna act like I care, and here's crumbs. Do you want these crumbs?" In hopes that I'm gonna say, "Yeah, sure, that'd be great." So then I responded and I said, "Well, unfortunately that wouldn't work for me. Wouldn't be worth me coming over here." I said, "The new job that I've taken will have me working about 50 to 55 hours, probably more. So unfortunately, I don't think that would work." He's like, "Oh, well, where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to be a general manager at Dunkin' Donuts." Dunkin'. I got to get used to saying that. I was like, "But yeah, I'm going to be a general manager at Dunkin'." He goes, "Oh, that's awesome. That's a hard job." I was like, "Yeah, but I can do it. I can handle it. So I'll be okay. Thanks." Everybody else that I told was just like, "Oh my God, good luck. Wish you the best of luck. You're going to do great. You're going to rock it, whatever." This guy chooses to go, "That's a hard job." Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I could probably do it better than you're doing your current job. So that alone was just like, oh God, I can't wait. I am so happy with this decision just to get out. And the decision I made could have definitely been the worst decision, to move over back into Dunkin' and deal with this bullshit that I may experience. But you know what? I don't think I would have been better off staying here anyways, because like I said, they just don't seem to care enough to want to know the things that they should want to know. If your store has high turnover like that, there's a reason. Why, as a manager, aren't you taking the steps to figure out why? Why don't you care enough as a manager? You should. Turnover is bad. That means your employees are unhappy with something. So figure it out. Fucking care enough to figure it out. But they clearly don't, and so that's cool. I don't care anymore. But in the future, yeah, I would encourage you to give a shit. Overall, my experience working for the Fresh Market was not a great one. I really wish that I had enjoyed my time there more. Working at a place that looks as beautiful as it does, you would expect to kind of be treated much better, and you would expect for your amenities and things like that to be just on a better scale. And unfortunately, they weren't. Like, the store itself looks gorgeous, but it would rain and we had little holes everywhere, so we'd have to put like flower buckets to capture the holes. And then once you walk past those double doors into the back room, it just looks like a pretty shitty place. Like, our break room was pretty nasty, the refrigerator looks nasty, we had these old school dirty lockers, a microwave that was never clean, a counter that was dirty, no sink so we could wash dishes or anything like that. They have a soda machine, and it's discounted at 50 cents a can, which is nice, but half the time they had expired sodas in there. One of the nice things that they did though, we had bakery products that were going out, they would put it there for us, but they wouldn't allow any of the people to take it home. And it's like, a lot of people, we're kind of hungry at home, we're living paycheck to paycheck. It'd be nice if we could bring those things home to our families, or if we know other people that are in need, things like that. I don't see what was the big deal with that, but like, those are one of the things that my manager was like super big on, making sure nobody took any of that food home. And I thought that was just really stupid, especially because a lot of it goes to waste at the end of the day. A lot of it would probably be used more if we were allowed to take it home. So I just never understood things like that, and it kind of was stupid and frustrating. Like I said, overall, I really do wish that I had had a better experience. I can't say that I would honestly recommend this job for anyone unless they change a lot of things, just the way that the overall thing is done. I don't know if this is how other fresh markets run, but mine was just not great. And until they stop defending and really listening to their employees and taking an interest in listening and asking those questions, this store is always going to suffer from extremely high turnover, and it's a shame. I have moved on to greener pastures. I will now be working at Dunkin' again, which is interesting, I guess. I will be a general manager at Dunkin', which is fun for me to go ahead and take on this role. I loved Dunkin'. If you have seen my Dunkin' video, I said the worst thing about Dunkin', I believe, was just the fact that it's run by franchises, and franchise don't offer you anything. Hopefully this is going to work out much better for me. So I will keep you updated. I'll probably do like maybe my first 2 months there, and I'll go ahead and make a video, and that'll be exciting. We'll see what kinds of wonderful adventures come up to the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I said in my prior video that I would love to hear from you guys as far as your job experiences and your job stories. If you guys would like to send me those, I was thinking about maybe doing a video talking about all of them and kind of being your voice for anybody that maybe wants to kind of get their voice out there about how certain companies run, because I think it's important that we do talk more about those companies and hopefully trying to incite some sort of change. So I would love to be a voice for people who would need that. So if you're interested in sending me any of your job stories, you can send it to my email down below in the description, and if I have enough, I will go ahead and make a video. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one. See ya!